All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the live finals of Numeric's Finance Engineer Cup. We got a long show today. I want to keep things snappy, so we're going to give folks about another minute to enter. And then after that, we're going to get this show on the road. But as you come in, we'd love to hear where folks coming in from. You can go ahead and put it in the chat where you're based, where you're signing on from. But we are super excited to get things started. So give ourselves another 30 seconds to a minute here, and then we'll go from there. All right. Columbus, San Jose, SF, New York, Austin. Matt, we got another Austin person out here. Super. Super. All right, we'll give folks about another 15 seconds, then we'll get this thing going. Finalists, how you guys are feeling? Leslie, Matt, Alex, Casey?
Good. Excited.
Nice. Yeah. Seeing some nods, seeing some nods.
Yeah, excited. Looking forward to seeing what everyone else is doing.
Right on. All right. Well, like I said, we got a lot to get through today, so I don't want to hold any longer. As folks come in, of course, they'll get situated and see what's going on. But again, everyone, welcome to Numeric's live finals of Finance Engineer Cup. I'm going to share my screen quickly, walk through a few slides explaining how everything's going to work today. Sorry, got the jitters myself, and then we'll get into the builds. All right, all right. So let's see if I'm able to present. Uh-oh. All right, I think we should be good now. Steve, I see you. Yep, I got 2 thumbs up. Great.
Yeah,
Uh,
looks good.
awesome. I appreciate it. So we had our live finals here. Agenda, I'll do a quick intro for our judges. We'll get into the presentations. We have 4 finalists. We're going to walk through each build. Then we'll take after each build, we'll take questions from 2 of our judges as well as questions from our audience. Move on to our next build. And then at the end of today's competition, we'll, of course, crown our inaugural Finance Engineer Cup champion, which I'm super excited about. So how's this going to work? Essentially, each finalist is going to present for 5 minutes. After that presentation, we'll have 2 of our judges chime in on the build. They can ask questions. They can say, oh, wow, I really liked how you did this. After that concludes, we're going to take 1 to 2 questions for the audience. At the same time, we're going to give our judges a chance to tabulate their scores. They have a scorecard and everything. And then in addition to that, let me see. At the end of our presentation, we'll tally our scores and decide a winner. So that's kind of how it works. I'm super excited. As for our judges panel, coming in as the Director of Accounting Operations at Public, say hello to Steve Nolan. Steve, what's going on, man?
Hey, I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here today. I'm excited to see all these builds, guys. Thank you for having me, Nigel. And yeah, super excited.
I'm excited as well. It seems at the moment our guy Chris Gaetano has not made it into the building. I'm going to check in, see if he might be on his way. But in the meantime, Angela Liu, you're checking in from the Numeric offices. How's it going?
It's going well. Excited to be here.
Excited to have you. David, the CFO of Jewish Federation of San Diego. How are you? You didn't bring H2 this time, it seems.
I didn't bring H2. H2 is my always on AI assistant, and was a little disappointed he didn't get an invite here. But I'm in New York City, so I'm based in San Diego, but here in the Numeric offices, which is apparently the first day in the offices for everybody here on the team.
Well, look at you, ringing things in with style. And, oh, pardon me. And Karthik Padma. You run accounting at Cursor. Karthik, how's it going? You're in SF today. How's it looking, man?
Looking great. I'm very excited to see what the candidates have.
Indeed. All right. So these are our judges. Thank you guys for being here today. You guys are awesome. And then these are our finalists. So we have Leslie, a senior accountant at Jasper AI, Matt, a senior accounting manager at ClickUp, Alex, a senior manager of accounting operations at Betterment, and Casey, a senior accounting manager at Pulumi. as we get into each contestant, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves and then share your screens and walk through your builds. But yeah, I believe our first contestant that's gonna go is Casey. So as I move over, Casey, man, do you want to introduce yourself? How are things going today? Where are you calling in from?
Things are going well. I'm calling in from Tampa, Florida.
Right on, right on. And tell me a little bit, what got you interested in building? What made you say, "Hey, I think the finance engineer title resonates with me. I want to give this competition a go."
I think it was not enough time in the day to complete the tasks I needed to complete. So AI was a great tool to help speed up what I needed to get done, which was the month end close.
For sure. I'm sure people are wondering, where did you start? What were the tools that you started to dig your teeth into, and then from there got into really building the things that you're going to present today?
Yeah, definitely Claude. But I think there's multiple layers to it. Claude, just starting off as a chatbot and then learning how Claude can be more deeply integrated into my workflows. I think Claude Opus 4.6, once it started integrating with Excel, really was a game changer in terms of how I built out workbooks and how I could see AI playing a much bigger role in the way that I was managing, the various close files and processes that I was dealing with.
Right on. Well, Casey, without any further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, allow you to share what's on yours, and why don't we get into your build? You'll have 5 minutes to present. I'll start the clock once everything's set and you begin talking about your build.
Sounds good.
All right. I just allowed access for you to share, so let me know. Well, I guess we'll see here in a second if you're if that works. Oh, okay. Super.
Okay. All right. Do you see the
Oh,
right scroll?
yes. And quickly I'll say the judges to give notes on Casey after he presents will be Karthik and Steve. All right.
All right.
Casey, without further ado, you can begin.
All right. As I mentioned, I'm Casey Berry, and this is my 18-day ramp. On day one, my head of finance gave me the most finance team welcome possible. Great to have you. We need to close April yesterday. Go figure it out. And that was a real starting point for this project. It wasn't a controlled sandbox or a workflow that had already been neatly documented. It was a live finance environment mid-close where the business needed answers before I had the full map. The context existed, but like most real finance context, it was spread across systems, spreadsheets, recordings, Slack threads, process history, and people's heads. So the question was simple. How do you ramp quickly without sacrificing judgment? My answer was to treat onboarding like an engineering problem. Use AI to map the system, reconstruct context, turn operational knowledge into process infrastructure, and make inherited files agent ready. This is not a story about AI replacing finance judgment. It's a story about using AI to get to judgment faster. Let me show you what that looks like. The first problem was system architecture. You inherit books and they don't tie. The close has to move forward, but you can't close what you can't explain. And the numbers being wrong is not the hardest part. The hardest part is that you can't reconstruct how they got there. That was the problem I was facing. A subsidiary had drifted out of sync, there was no clean handoff, and the context was scattered across different systems, files, and pieces of history. Before I could fix anything, I needed to understand what happened, where it happened, what it tied to, and what could actually be trusted. So I used AI as a reconstruction layer. I took the scattered context, ledger exports, bank statements, inherited workbooks, recordings, and walkthrough, and I brought it into one working view. Then I anchored everything to the last clean month and worked forward from there. The goal was not to ask AI, what's the answer? The goal was to rebuild the trail so the numbers could be explained again, transaction by transaction, account by account, month by month. That surfaced the real issue, clearing activity that wasn't clearing, payments outside the expected flow, entries that were close but not quite right, and balances that had more history than logic behind them. The output was not just a journal entry, it was a correction package. What happened, why it happened, how it tied to the source, and what still needed to be reviewed before anything posted. That set the standard for the project. Move fast, but only as fast as the explanation can follow. The second problem is process context. Finance teams do not just inherit numbers, they inherit the process behind those numbers. And in any scaling company, that context is naturally distributed. Billing knows one piece, revenue knows another, sales has the contract context, and a GL has the accounting result. And month-end close is where all of those pieces have to agree. That is a real challenge. A process can technically exist, but still be hard to operate if the knowledge is trapped in conversations, walkthroughs, Slack threads, and people's memories. So the question became, how do you turn that scattered process knowledge into something the finance team can actually use? My workflow here is simple. Take a real process walkthrough, record it, and transcribe it. Then use AI to turn that conversation into a process artifact, not just meeting notes, not just a transcript, an operating map. The operating map answers the questions that actually matter. Who starts the process? Which system is a source of truth? Where does the data move? Who reviews it? Who reconciles it month end? And where are the control points? And once that process is mapped, you can risk scope it. You can see where judgment happens, where data changes, where review is missing, and where the error would actually hit the close. That helps prioritize the work based on risk, not just noise. In this example, I map the order to cash process from close one to billing, rev rec, collections, and close. The key insight is that every finance number has a process behind it. Revenue does not just appear in the GL, it moves through contract terms, billing, setup, usage logic, credits, and close review. So the value is not just documentation, it's turning scattered process knowledge into something the finance team can actually use. A new person can ramp faster, the team can view the process the same way, control points become easier to spot, and eventually an AI agent has a clean map to operate from. That is the pipeline. Conversation becomes documentation, documentation becomes control surface, and that control surface becomes automation ready. The third problem was making the work repeatable. That's where the project moves from understanding the workflow to designing how it can be run again next month. Because finance doesn't just run on systems, it also runs on workbooks, accruals, prepaids, reconciliations, close schedules. All those files carry a lot of judgment. Formulas, assumptions, review points, prior period logic. A lot of that logic is not obvious until someone explains it. So the question became, how do you make a workbook agent ready without pretending the agent should run close by itself? Here's my answer. File intelligence first, agent deployment second. First, use AI to walk through the workbook, identify the inputs, the rules, the outputs, then rebuild the file so the logic is clear, repeatable, and explainable. After that, I write the agent tab. That is the operating guide for the agent. It tells the agent what data to use, what logic to apply, what exceptions to flag, and what a human needs to review before anything posts. That's the safety model. An agent can prepare the work, draft, reconcile, and flag issues, but finance still needs to own the conclusion. The goal is not to remove the reviewer, it's to give the reviewer a better starting point. And that brings me to the broader vision, one judgment multiplied. I don't think the future of finance is human versus AI. I think it's something more practical, moving from memory to architecture. Because today, a lot of finance work depends on memory. Someone remembers how the file works, why a balance looks unusual, where the exception is, what changed last quarter, and that's normal. But it doesn't scale forever. What scales is structured context, a map process, a documented file, a reviewed correction package, and a workflow where human judgment is captured clearly enough to be reused. That's why I think AI is a force multiplier, not a replacement. It can map the system, summarize the walkthrough, reconcile the file, and surface the risk, but the human still reviews, the human still challenges, and the human still signs off. So if I had to summarize this project in one sentence, it would be this. I used AI not to skip the hard parts of finance, but to make the hard parts visible, structured, repeatable, and reviewable. And that was my 18-day ramp. Thanks for watching.
Casey, amazing. Thank you so much. Steve Nolan, I see you just came off your mic. What do
Yeah,
you think of Casey's work here?
Casey, this is incredible. Yeah, I have a very similar thought in how AI is going to supercharge people in the finance department and just, for the rest of our careers. I feel like this is a big turning point and wonderful, wonderful use case. I would love to actually try it as well, but we can take that offline. Question for you. So I see you went through the OTC process and really want to understand, can the agent learn by watching a user perform the keystrokes in an Excel file, or do you need to create the process document first and then it can analyze and find the pain points and try to reconcile?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in my ramping phase, my approach was just draft up a questionnaire and then turn that into context. But we actually have a 6:30 year-end audit going on now, and I'm really excited about deploying something like that, where as I go through the audit, as I go through all the different work papers we need to prepare for the audit, can we pick up that context in the same way that I would pick up the context through a normal conversation? So I haven't tried it yet, but I think that's a logical next step of how we can sponge up as much information as possible.
Cool. No, thank you for clarifying on that. Yeah, super, super useful. Yeah, that's my first question. I'll hand the floor to the other judge, and if I have more, I'll definitely jump back in.
Of course, Steve. Karthik, what did you think of what Casey put together?
I really liked it. Great job. Clearly, a lot of thought here, and you clearly share the same sentiment of making things sustainable and scalable. I did have One question on your use case one. I've experienced this myself. You put a lot of files, etc., into a agent, and it does a lot of things with it. Have you thought about retracing steps at all and determining whether the model or your agent has captured all the correct context?
Yeah, and that's I think what I found to be most useful in this is one, creating the context window, but like with that comes deep, understanding the historical process. And ultimately, in the subsidiary that went adrift, it was reconciling everything to a source input. And what I found is if you try to one shot a huge amount of context with AI, your result is likely to be all over the place. But if you can start giving it, narrow instructions piece by piece, it led me to find the most accurate output in terms of working with the AI model to help guide me. But it was more guiding the AI model as I was completing the task than relying so much on the model itself to complete it for me, if that makes sense.
Yep, makes sense.
Amazing. All right, judges, I'm going to give everyone 2 minutes. Go ahead and tabulate your scores for Casey's build. And in the meantime, I would love to give our audience a chance to ask a question, throw a question into the chat. What might you think, or what might you have, what might you want to ask Casey about his 18-day rant project? So again, we're giving our judges a 2-minute period to tabulate their scores for Casey. And at the same time, curious what folks in the chat might think. Here, as we wait for a question, Casey, I'll ask you. Of course, there was a first round of the Finance Engineer Cup, right, where you kind of were working off of a given prompt. Oh, okay, we have our first question. Someone asked, how did you create the video within the one working context box, the continuously scrolling box?
That was a lot of iteration with Claude. I would say that what's nice is you describe verbally, and Claude is able to make things come alive in a way that you hope for. So I thank Claude for that.
Truly, truly cool. James asked, in use case one, how does the AI agent know how to perform the recon? Did you have to review all the source documents for completeness and accurateness first? Great question.
Yeah, I think as I was working through it, it's again, as I mentioned, it's really reconciling account by account, and then you start to define what are the repeatable steps that are happening per account, and then the AI is understanding that logic that's applied during the reconciliation, and then it's able to complete the subsequent steps. So yeah, it's a lot of it's kind of hand-holding AI from beginning to end, but also the AI is learning along the way. And usually what happens when I hit the end of my context window within Claude, I'll have it give me a digest of everything it's learned. So then when I refresh that context with a new chat, it'll be able to rely on its existing information to keep going.
Superb. All right. Well, Casey, we thank you so much for presenting. We're now going to move on to our next contestant.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Alexandria, you're next. How's it going? Tell the folks where are you calling in from today?
Hey Nigel, my name is Alexandria Ramirez. I am the Senior Accounting Operations Manager here at Betterment, and I am calling in from NYC today.
Right on, right on. And as I asked Casey, tell me a little bit about what got you interested in this world of building with AI.
Definitely. I would say I've had the privilege, Betterment, being in the fintech space and definitely constantly abreast of all of the technology changes and so forth. AI and finance and AI and the accounting space was something that we've been looking at really since I joined Betterment about 2 years ago. So I would say that the acceleration for being unlocked to be able to do a lot of this building myself, not necessarily sitting with the engineers, has just accelerated a lot of ideas that I had kind of floating around my brain over the last, in my time here.
Totally. It feels like this is a moment where the AI tools have become the unlock for ideas accountants had for, months and years prior to. To that point, you have a build that you want to show our audience.
Yes, very excited to show.
All right. Why don't you share your screen? And once you get that started, I'll set your timer for 5 minutes.
Alrighty. Believe I am sharing now.
All right, you're good to go.
All right. So as I have pulled up here on the screen, putting AI into the close is a trust problem, not a tech problem. So I think this is fundamentally, this tension that we have as accountants and as any people in finance in general about what can we trust with AI. This is certainly something that's been, driving a lot of the conversations that we've been having internally, a lot of what I've been seeing externally. So that's why I built the 4i check. The thesis of this project is simple. We don't build faster reconciliation. We build governance for AI reconciliation, a trust architecture that a non-engineer can actually audit and deliver to auditors. The 4i check is an adversarial reconciliation engine designed to provide rigorous governance and auditability for AI-driven financial processes. It utilizes a dual agent architecture where two independent AI agents perform reconciliation tasks, mimicking the traditional segregation of duties found in manual accounting. A deterministic controls layer oversees these agents, automatically clearing matching results while flagging disagreements for human intervention. The core architecture of this project deeply understands traditional accounting controls and directly translates them into code. The system prioritizes transparency and integrity, generating tamper-evident evidence packages and requiring multi-party approval for any rulebook changes. By aligning with COSO internal control standards, this project ensures that AI agents only narrate and analyze data rather than making final unmonitored financial decisions. All operations are supported by a robust monitoring framework that tracks memory accuracy, cadence drift, and manual overrides to maintain high trust levels for financial stakeholders. So what that kind of looks like in practice. So the way that I kind of constructed this and the way that I kind of built this out, obviously, ends up with a lot of code, a lot of Python, a lot of, different things under the hood of the engine. And then I wrote a thin MCP wrapper to allow this to run locally on your drive. So that allows me to basically go into Claude, run, a prompt that says run reconciliation, and then it is running the process. So the engine and the build itself is living on your local drive, running through your system, and then this is the front end. So what you see here is kind of, what would be the result of that. So, the reconciliation ran, you have your, two agents, like I said, and then, there's a flagged mismatch. And, when there's that flag mismatch, then it's calling for the human to kind of come in and to clear that mismatch because the two agents disagreed. So, a few areas of this build that I definitely do want to kind of emphasize and highlight, segregation of duties being one of them. Instead of just relying on one AI agent to reconcile an account, this engine specifically is designed to use two independent AI agents that review the same feed. This mirrors, again, that kind of traditional two-person control finance teams use for manual closes and rely upon. And if the agents agree, the item can auto-clear. So, and then if they disagree to the root cause, it flags that line for human review. So, and then one of the biggest fears, again, kind of going back to this tension that we have, is AI hallucinating financial figures. This system enforces a strict boundary. The AI only narrates the reasoning. It never performs the math or decides a final verdict. That core matching, controls, hashing, and memory verification are handled by traditional deterministic code. And then also, again, leaning into the controls element, this engine maps directly to COSO's achieving effective internal control over generative AI that they came out with recently, featuring 7 distinct controls. This includes a threshold register for matching logic and a cadence drift detector to catch kind of, different iterations of things that you see come through. And then all of that kind of comes out into something that is, I think, envisioning for what I see, something that you're able to actually give to AI. So I'm really seeing this as something that you're able to automate away and you're removing and pushing something so a human doesn't have to be there, stamping through every single item. You're giving it back to kind of automation, and then you're leaving yourself with the highest priority items. But yeah, that is the crux of my build.
Amazing. Very comprehensive, Alexandria. Very comprehensive. Our two judges to comment. First, Angela Liu. I also didn't say Angela Liu, founder of Gap Savvy, the technical accounting community du jour. Angela, what were your thoughts on Alex's presentation?
One, I think this was super nice because I feel like it's the question that's coming up right now as people are starting to deploy and trust a lot more, and the auditor question is very front and center. Um, and again, very, very comprehensive. So I have kind of two questions. Actually, one of them is related to like, as you find exceptions, have you contemplated or thought or like have like a self-learning loop or like a memory layer as it's taking in those exceptions? And then the other one, I'll just ask both so you can, if they're connected. Kind of explain a little bit about your architecture. I think it's interesting that you kept the build on like kind of like on-prem on your computer versus and having it be triggered through Claude. Was there a specific reason for that from like a controls perspective or a build perspective? Those kind of are the two, but super excited
Yeah.
that you're building this.
Thank you, thank you. And I would say that I think both of my answers are a bit connected. So yes, there is a memory component to this. I'm super jazzed and I kind of light up when, and my team will say the same thing when I'm talking about AI memory. It's something that I'm kind of doing. I've gone fully down the rabbit hole about, what is the best framework? And I don't think that there is a ton of guidance, particularly for us in the finance space, about where we should be storing our context, where we should be storing any of this information. Obviously, you can see that I did leverage GitHub for this particular project, but again, ideally with this memory seam and the way that I have it constructed is that it is being able to then reference back to the previous period closed and then run that reference and learn from there. But it's definitely something that was very front of mind for me and that I've, tried to address, but I think that it will definitely need to some more engineering effort before we'd be able to go to full scale production.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. And David Furman, any thoughts here on what Alex has put together?
Yeah, this is great. I mean, I'll tell you, this is one of the builds that I think is exciting. Some of the stuff that I've been building on, inside my team is like actually linking these systems together and trying to do some of the same work and running into some of these actually same types of problems. So I'm familiar with sort of like some of the production level issues, some of the memory issues. I do have a question about the different, like one, two questions sort of related to the agents and maybe sort of something I would suggest, but what's the difference between the instructions that you're giving the two agents? So you want different results, presumably, to come out of the two agent reviews. And then third, I wanted to like, what's the output coming out of your systems? Because then you're sort of doing like a strict analytic determination based on whether they converge or not, is my understanding. And then that's escalating to human review if they do not match, if they don't agree. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. So the agent instructions are different. So they are, given kind of both different kind of frameworks and for exactly, the seven different kind of control structures that I'm trying to hit on, they're kind of split between the two agents. So, the cadence drift of one isn't the priority necessarily of the first agent. The first agent's only focused on reconciling against, using ERP as a source of truth versus bank statement. And bank statement versus ERP is kind of like a more friendlier way of kind of thinking about it. But yes, the core agent instructions are different. And that's why you also see different reasoning errors here highlighted in each of their agent output. So the output here is definitely something that I'm still tinkering with. And I think when in one of my like first builds, it came back as like, a JSON and it was, not really that pretty. And, who really wants to read that? Who wants to put that into something to transpose? But I don't think that this necessarily is something that I would end on either. I think this is kind of the current state, but definitely I hear that feedback as well.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, well, why stop at two? There's sort of
Yeah.
in accounting, like, oh, well, we have one preparer reviewer, and then it's also like, actually, you could have 100, right? Like, what's the, I mean, what's the upper limit of, rolling through different options with different sets of instructions? That sort of that's some feedback that I would provide is I run into some of that when I'm looking at something like Stripe transactions, deposits to the bank that are in batches, how that's entered into Salesforce, how that could be split transactions, how that gets entered into our financial system, and then trying to use an agent to sort of match all this. And I found I have to sort of layer on some of the matching to get through some of the nuances that end up based on dates or split transaction sizes or different things that might pop up in the data feed that the agent sort of looks at and goes, I don't know, these are different. And then I have a ton of false positives to clear out of the system.
Definitely. And I think that's where the kind of the bespoke nature of, this is like kind of a framework, but I definitely think that depending on your reasoning or what you're exactly trying to reconcile, if it's something that's, perhaps simpler, it's one operating account that has 10 transactions a month, you don't necessarily need more than two agents or, one agent.
Yeah, right.
But it's like foundationally, it's like I think two is kind of my baseline. And then I agree, there's really not a upper limit depending on the complexity of what you're trying to achieve.
And are you going to open source your repo?
Hey, David and Alex, my
Yeah.
producers are
Okay. Sorry.
calling my
Okay.
line. They're calling my line. They're playing the Oscars music. And so I want to give our judges a 2 minute, just as we did for Casey, to go in and tabulate scores. At the same time, while you guys were discussing, a number of questions have popped into the chat, as well as some compliments and acknowledgments, right? People saying things like, "I love this. I learned so much." One question here, Alex, is people want to know, one, is this GitHub public? Is this something they can see? And then also, what kind of were the agents or the models used to power the agents that you have here?
Yes. So this was entirely kind of Claude built. So Claude definitely, is kind of the source of, the script. This GitHub is public. So, definitely open source. I have no qualms about, please iterate, fork, improve. This is definitely just, one iteration. I'm a huge fan of the open source idea.
Superb. Oh yeah, and then the last question I'll ask here, Nancy Pham asked, what's the audit package look like for something like this?
So that is a great question. I think that the kind of monitoring stage and kind of where the output is going to be is ultimately it is cryptographically meshed. So it is always going to be kind of on your local drive that you're going to be able to kind of pull from, and that you can't that you can't deconstruct or pull apart or edit. That's the big thing, is it's not editable. And that log of this is in your front end where you can kind of see and then kind of pull from. The extraction of that, I was kind of playing around with, because I don't love the idea of just like a standard CSV export, because then you can edit that. So, I think that's kind of that's showing the limitation of kind of my ability. Like, I know that it needs to be stored securely, but then accessing and getting that secure, I think, is kind of a phase 2 build for sure.
Amazing. Well, Alex, thank you so much for presenting. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Of course. All right. Next up, Leslie from Jasper AI. Leslie, how's it going?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Of course, we're excited to see what you have to present. As I've asked Casey and I asked Alex a minute ago as well, what kind of got you into the fold? What got you excited about building with AI in finance?
I think having been with an AI company now for a year and a half, we're always being challenged with how can we work on things smarter, not harder. And now with the access to Claude, I think we've all really seen that explode over the last 6 months, with just taking things and being able to just do some very, very cool concepts that 6 months ago I did not think were possible, my build being one of them. So I would be happy to jump into that and continue to show you what we've been doing.
By all means. I'll have a quick acknowledgement. Chris Gaetano, a technology editor from Accounting Today, is here. Chris, good to see you. Glad you're able to join us on the panel here. I know you have been able you were in the audience. We just brought you to the panel, so you have seen both of the first contestants' builds, which is great. But hello, good to see you.
Glad to be here. Sorry about the technical difficulty earlier.
All good. Things occur. Leslie, on to you. Why don't you begin? Oh, our judges that will be commenting, Chris, yourself, and Karthik again.
All right, let me know when I'm all set.
All right, and you may begin. Go ahead.
All right, my name's Leslie Cunnane, and I'm a senior accountant at Jasper AI. and today I'll be showing my cash intelligence dashboard. So the issue was never understanding what changed with the numbers throughout the month, but it was really being able to explain why. And this dashboard has been able to move us from a retroactive approach of answering our finance team's broader questions at the month to being very proactive, flex commentary, very transparent reporting right off the bat. This model is connected to Numeric, NetSuite, and Ramp currently. And on our overview dashboard, you can see the breakdown of all of our cash accounts. And these are reconciled directly against our reconciliations in Numeric to give us a level of certainty over the completeness and accuracy of these numbers. These are all fully drillable down to the detail running directly through the NetSuite account. And you can, in the active model, drill into all these transactions directly within NetSuite. You'll be able to see your burn, your implied runway, and your cash use year to date. The most exciting feature of this is our AI Flex commentary. This is flowing through directly through what's been added in the Flex for month over month, quarter over quarter. You can toggle between the different months and quarters here and edit and add your own context as you see fit. Down here, we have our forward cash projection. This is going to show your runway based off the current month's burn for the next 6 months. And one of the features down here is being able to remove one-time transactions that you might find are inflating your burn and should be removed for whatever purpose you see. Your burn rate is going to be your cash roll forward. You can see month over month here, and one of the biggest features on this is the tab I added here for variance and burn rate thresholds. The controller is able to go in and add tolerance levels for what's appropriate on these respective flex tabs, as well as say what's appropriate for our runway comfort. Anything outside these thresholds is going to flag for further review. The month over month flux is derived from our numeric cash module rules. I ended up going this route because we already have spent an extensive time building out this logic on the back end here, and this gives us a level of certainty out of how all of these transactions are going to be bucketed. So we're comparing 1-to-1 each month, and we get really clean output on our AI response, which again, you can go in and edit and add as you see, but this is going to give you a great baseline for context in each of these different areas. And all of these are fully drillable down to your bill payment, your deposits, and your journal entries, so you can go straight to the source. At the bottom here, we'll have our sign-off approval by the accountant and controller, and this is going to flow through directly into your audit tab, and that will be stored for future reference. Your quarter over quarter is going to be very similar to your month over month, just giving you a broader view of what's happening throughout the year. Again, pulling in our flex commentary and being very one-to-one and comparable across all months. This is going to show your trend by category down here, running totals. Gives you a really good idea of how we're tracking in the various buckets. And again, this will be your sign-off here. Go ahead and sign off so you can go see how this flows through on the audit tab. Something we recently started doing in Q1 of this year is doing a budget versus actuals comparison. So we'll pull in the budget directly from our op model, compare that to actuals. These again will pull through just like they are in the other flex tabs. And this gives our broader finance team a really good insight into how we're tracking against expectations, where we exceeded, where we may have fallen short, and it's going to give them a nice summary down here of where they may need to dig into more detail. In hand with that, I created a vendor detail tab. This is going to be when all the cash payments went out the door for all of the different vendors. You can search by specific vendor, department, category, all of the months. And this is going to help determine if we have a true variance or whether something is just timing based on that budget versus actuals. And of course, the hype right now is all about being able to audit what we've created with AI. So we have our SOX controls. This is going to lay out your data integrity, have all of your sign-offs. You can see down here where I signed off. This will keep a running track of all of that for future reference. And this is going to make sure that we pass all of our data integrity checks and that everything is one-to-one between the systems. Finally, we have our upload tab. This is going to show all the active connectors and allow you to put a supporting document. The way I see this working in the future is that currently this is a cash reporting dashboard. I really want to move this into a cash position and projection dashboard by bringing in our Maxio connection so we can start projecting what collections could look like by the end of the month, as well as looking in Ramp to see what are our pending payments by the end of the month, what's scheduled, so we can start to see where our cash will be on day one of the month by the end. Thank you.
Beautiful, Leslie. It seems that people in the comments are saying that, this is an incredible build, especially useful for things like startups as well. Karthik, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely echo that sentiment. This is really nice. Really well thought through. So appreciate you presenting this here. One question, and just curious on your thoughts on the audit tab. To your point, maybe this is a bit more operational and management. But what level of detail or thoughts do you have to make this more sustainable going forward, maybe from a private company world to a public company world?
Great question. So just like if I'm understanding the correct question correctly, just how the whole model itself, or just the audit reporting tab and just.
Just the audit reporting tab specifically, obviously it feeds from all of the other
Mhm.
tabs. But you've noted like a couple of different areas like data integrity, some SOX controls, etc. Um, how would that kind of evolve as this may become more important?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that as this moves into something more robust and as the company grows in size, then the controls will grow with that. Um, I messed around with the controls on the initial build for, the like case study for this too. And that one was probably a little more robust than this. I think depending on the use case of the level of scrutiny you're going to have over this, then that's like where I would really start to dig in to more like compliance driven and really like follow specific frameworks. This is truly just built right now for like what our level of approval and where we see like the controls just being at the stage we are today.
Awesome. I want to pass over Chris, commentary and a question. If you
All
if
right. All right, great. First of all, yeah. Just as a note, first of all, I am neither an accountant, I'm not an engineer, but you know what? As a journalist, what I love is that I can instantly grasp what this is, why people would use it, I can imagine that it's something that a new user can immediately, understand and wrap their minds around, And so, first of all, I think that just accessibility is really a great point there. Um, what I would, I guess, more have sort of a question about was regarding the flux analysis, the AI-derived narratives over there. So, how exactly, what was your method to ensure the accuracy of those particular outputs? I mean, what I really love as well is I see so many different sort of solutions that do talk about the what, right? That are extremely detailed dashboards, But what I do love is the explanation of the why. That I don't really see that as much, but how do you know that the why is really the why?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was kind of what I alluded to with I've done many renditions of this over the last 6 months, really starting with the connection to NetSuite directly and trying to give the model guidance on looking at certain GL accounts and then digging into the memo and description from there. And I think as we've all the data hallucination became a real problem there. And I was just getting wild responses that were inconsistent month over month, which is then where Numeric just launched the ability to download their cash reconciliations last month. And I had them add in what each line item's rule was off of. Every line item that we have running through our bank is going through a numeric cash match rule. This is giving the foundation here. And so giving that little bit of guidance to the model already gave it some background context about what we're really interested in looking at in this flux over here. So it's not just going like wild with its
Mhm.
own idea of what it should be looking at. It already knows like these are customer deposits. Let's pull out like what were the key customers that drove this increase this month. what were our key vendors? Like, let's look at what are the key events for T&E? Like, was our company traveling this month? Like, what are we really looking at? And from there, I'm able to get very concise one sentence liners about the flux.
All right. And I guess
Oh,
I just had I'm
Chris,
sorry.
in the interest of time, I'm gonna stop us here, but Leslie, I really appreciate your build, and I want to make sure that we move on and give our guy Matt enough time. So I'm gonna give judges. It seems like most people put in their scores. A few of you maybe haven't. So in this case, I'll give about a minute or so for us to take questions from the audience. There seemed to be a ton. There seemed to be a ton, Leslie. So a first question here. Nancy asked, on the Flux tab, are the Flux comments/notes AI generated as well?
Yes, so these all will be first rendition iterative of just the AI model going through. And then, I mean, we always like to add more context because the human intervention, like you're always going to know a little bit more just in the business case than what flows through the models and like line descriptions or memos. So that's why I added the ability to edit. But you should never be coming in here and doing this from like scratch. You'll already know like, okay, cool. Like let's look at our card spend for the month. Like that was because we're at Cannes right now. Like we're spending more money there. So yeah, that's the foundation.
And then the last quick question here. Cameron says, we're always trying to improve our 13-week forecast, but haven't been able to use NetSuite data because the data is typically 2 to 3 days stale. Have you had any problems like that?
Definitely have had issues, especially with the initial cash match we ran through NetSuite for, until we came on last year to Numeric. And that was like what expedited our cash match to day one of close. Honestly, this model could be produced to the company on day one, but we end up being like a little late on a couple of our accounts don't have the statements available till day two. So definitely seen limitations if you're just stuck in the NetSuite environment with some delays in data. And that's where I would say the new systems out there might be worth looking at for faster data iteration.
Indeed. Leslie, thank you so much for presenting.
Thank you.
All right. Last but certainly not least, Matt, we appreciate your patience. Matt, pleasure to meet you. Where are you calling in from?
Yeah, nice to be here. Calling in from Austin.
Right on, right on. And as I've asked your other finalist, what got you to into building with AI for finance use cases?
Yeah, I've always kind of been like the automation system guy, even like before AI became a thing. And then at some point, someone exposed me to Replit, which we're actually gonna show in my build today. And that kind of just like set me off to the races around like what AI was capable to do. So I've been able to take like that automation skill set that I had already with just an exponential amount of tools to really take it even more forward.
Superb. Well, you mentioned Replit. You said you want to show something, so the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, let's do it.
And then as for our judges, Steve and Angela, you will be providing commentary after.
Cool. So this is an application that I built to automate our AP processing. It's called Argus. From right here, we have a cockpit that shows invoices that are sitting in the queue. The whole app is integrated with Google Drive, Gmail, Coupa, NetSuite, ClickUp, and also as everything is powered by Anthropic models. So the way it'll work is that as an invoice comes into our AP inbox, that invoice will feed into here. And as an invoice comes into this particular app, I'm in a demo environment, so I'm just going to make sure I get something that works here. No, it's a bummer. All right, well, again, demo environment, so it's not working right now, but I can walk through the basic functionality here. So we can see everything extracts here from the invoice. It'll just pull in, it'll fire off 5 different AI prompts that will extract, classify, and match things to individual POs. From this dashboard, you'll see the POs that are available to match, requisitions that are pending in the queue, and it'll pull the line detail from the invoice amounts, whatever it needs to actually fully populate the invoice detail. And in this right side here, you'll see anything that needs to be done to actually fully push the invoice. So this you can see here is just missing a tax detail. So we're just going to add that here. See, nothing's working because the demo environment broke. That's great. But can totally just demo the rest of the features here. There's a couple of things that we can do within the application. We're able to dispute invoices. So from here, we are able to email out to our vendors based on whatever email that we have in the system. We can attach the invoice PDF here and then send it out, and this will come from our shared AP inbox. There's also a memory feature in here, so we can add natural language memories to each individual invoice. Super simple things to add for anyone to do. So whatever you would want an invoice to process, if there's certain specific handling that you want to happen on it, there's no like complicated rules that you need to set up. This matches to this. It's just like a natural language thing that you type in. We can also add comments into here. So if we want to collaborate internally, just add notes for the rest of the AP team to work on together. And I believe that's it on the invoice processing side. Some other fun things that we can do in here. The ClickUp integration is super helpful for us. All of our communication in our business happens within ClickUp. So we are also able to make comments in here and push those out to ClickUp so that we can collaborate with the business and make it very easy for us to loop people in wherever we need to. There is also data dumps for purchase orders, requisitions, an analytics dashboard that'll show what's going on in the pipeline, payment forecasts for things that are pending in here. And we're also able to export the data if we need to bring it into any other system for that matter. Other fun things that are in here that I don't think you can see within the application, it has its own MCP server. The MCP server can hook up to our agents in ClickUp, which allow us to query the data. It's very helpful for us triaging other vendor inquiries that come in throughout the day. The agent is able to pull context out of here for a particular invoice, draft an email, then we just say approve, and then we can send it. Yeah, I believe that's it.
Super, Matt. We appreciate it. Steve Nolan, thoughts?
Yeah, no, this is super awesome, super cool. Also love the colors on it, and great job on your poise for when it doesn't always work. I've been there. Good job. My question is like, is this your company's like complete AP subledger, or is this feeding into an AP subledger as well?
Yeah, great question. So we use Coupa for our procurement process, payment process. So we use this for the AP processing part, basically what happens until it gets into a pending approval status in Coupa. We don't want approvals happening in here, any of that stuff, right? Like we want controls around that. So we're using the system of record to manage that stuff. We just want to find a solution to automate the actual like data ingestion, right? That's the
Yeah.
time consuming part. So, just implementing this, I mean, we're saving the team like 60 to 80 hours a month from processing invoices. So it layers onto our stack without having to replace something completely and save us time.
Got it. So invoices come in through an AP alias, feeds into here, codifies, pushes to Coupa. Is that a correct flow?
Yep, that's right.
Cool. And then follow-up question, what is the feedback loop, right? Because I'm sure there's a miss rate. And then like how does the feedback loop happen, and how does is the model continuing to get trained for
Yeah,
future
no.
iterations?
So we are talking about a situation where pretty much everything is still human in the loop. Like somewhat the AI is extracting the information, we are reviewing it and then pushing it through. If we do see things coming incorrectly on a regular basis, we do have that memory feature in here where we can just say, hey, this vendor, AWS, for example, like we buy this on Marketplace. Always put it to this dummy vendor that we have so we can see our records. We can set it to do effectively whatever we want that just gets injected into the context window every time the invoice processes.
Cool. Wonderful. Thank you so much, and great job.
And Angela, what do you have to ask or say to Matt?
I'll first comment. So Matt, having spent a couple years building software as well, I worked to build an ERP at some point in my life. It is not a real demo unless it fails when you're in front of people. It's just how live demos work, and that's why people record them. So that was actually more realistic than you think, and you should feel good about it. I'm super impressed by the amount of connectors and the thoughtfulness both in the push as well as the push back. which is something that even production level systems often don't do the push back. So the fact that you're getting the invoices in and then pushing it back out into ClickUp is unique and very, very thoughtful. Also, the reason why things break is because when you go out into connectors. So I wanted to say that first because I think that that is actually a very hard thing to do in production in general. And then my question actually is because you hit that memory layer and you had those comments, I always think it's interesting because those silly little notes and comments fields are ones that in traditional software you often are like, oh, nobody knows how to do anything with that. But now that we're in this AI world, it actually quite matters. Do you have a thought process or like I saw you do the memory, but like in terms of versioning? So like thoughtfulness around like, did you put it on a time series or thoughtfulness around like when it gets pushed back, like if there are changes, do you also capture that layer so that when it goes into that self-learning loop, that you're able to either like version back or version forward, or capture that part of the context?
Yeah, great question. There is a loop that pulls information from Coupa if there are changes from the system back into here so that everything lives in perpetuity in here. I like having it in here mainly just because we have the MCP connected to it, and that makes us easy to pull in context into like our comms that we're doing in ClickUp, using it for our accruals, whatever it might be. But yeah, this effectively mirrors the source of truth, with Coupa still being our source of truth. If that
Got
answers your question.
Yeah, and what was your thought process around bringing in like building your own MCC server in here? Was it that push in and push out, or kind of maybe explain that piece a little as well?
Yeah, I mean the problem was is that like we didn't really have a solution for Coupa that was like that we could mirror with like AI agents. So we wanted a way that we could automate the data pulse um, without having to jump through a bunch of hoops, right? With like exports and teaching agents how to pull information from certain systems. So creating the MCP server was just mainly to bridge that gap so our agents could access that data um, without having us to intervene in any way. And this is a separate multi-agent layer of it where we can just use this application to also automate our inbox triage as well.
So you're giving it almost more context so that the brain can work in the MCC server level.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, judges, I'll give you about a minute or so to put in your final scores because I know we're running up on time here, and I imagine the audience, our finalists, and the other judges are really curious to see who's going to walk home with $5,000 and be the winner of the inaugural Finance Engineer Cup. Matt, thank you so much for presenting. A few questions here. Jansen Kosar asked, are new vendor aliases handled in your procurement process or through here?
Yeah, so all vendors are fully integrated into here after they are created. Our vendor process and onboarding process happens within ClickUp, and then gets integrated into Coupa and then integrated into here. So it's a three-way step.
Awesome. Super. Well, all right. It seems that all of our scores are in. And before we'll announce right on the hour. I'd like to launch a poll to our audience. What does our audience think? What do they have to say about what they saw and who they think ought to be the Finance Engineer Cup champion? So curious to see what our audience has to say before we reveal the final results here. Judges, any messages here on what you saw today and kind of what it makes you think about the future of finance? Maybe about 15 seconds each. We'll start with David.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I think, if you think back like accounting and finance and allowing us to sort of have these tools and just really implement and it's really exciting to see all that everybody's building and just, now we can just create. We can take what's sort of in our mind and move.
Amazing. Karthik.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see all of this. It makes me curious about sort of maybe the sustainability of some of these tools going forward in the overall stack, like the build versus buy.
Right on. Steve.
Great job, everyone, once again. This was an awesome experience. I can't wait to get back to my desk and start building because this is just so motivating. So I'm very excited for the future of finance.
Angela.
I'm super impressed and inspired by this group. This idea that you don't have to wait around for someone else to build it, but that you can also iterate with such thoughtfulness and continue to widen each workflow to every piece that wasn't built for you that you can now touch. I also recognize that I wanted to start a series called When You've Overvibed, but I love that what you guys did was not only did you vibe, but you thought about the edges. And I find that to be super inspiring. I do think our world is changing in this build to buy, but this is fun to see how it's progressed even in just months.
Amazing. And finally, Chris.
This was amazing. This was also an incredibly tough thing to judge. Every single one of these solutions were responding to real problems that I have heard a lot of people say. And I think they all demonstrate a lot of creativity and forethought. I've seen some incredibly janky vibe coded apps before that leak like a sieve. None of those were like that. I was incredibly pleasantly surprised.
Amazing. All right. Well, now is the time. The results are in, and it's time to announce our inaugural champion. So I'll first announce our runner-up. In second place is, I wish I had a drum roll, but I don't. Leslie of Jasper AI. Leslie, congratulations. And in first place, we have the inaugural winner of the Finance Engineer Cup, Alexandria Ramirez. Congratulations, Alex.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Wow. Congratulations to everyone else that was here with me. I was so impressed. I was slacking my team through this. I was like, hey, this is a great idea. So definitely, everyone, thank you.
Well, amazing. Everyone, I know we're at time, but we really appreciate you coming today and seeing all the bills of these phenomenal finance engineers. For all of our finalists, we will be reaching out. You still will be receiving a cash prize as well. So I'm excited to follow up with you guys for that. But thank you everyone for attending. This has been a phenomenal challenge, and we look forward to what continues in the world of finance engineering. So thank you all, and take care.